welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by Secure Shellfish, Remote for Mac, and Linode. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my co-host, Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm still, I think, stinging a little bit from all the ribbing I got for my IRL app. And you know, I think I said during that episode that I didn't go through with setting up an account. But then, lo and behold, Monday, right after we released the show, I was out running an errand in my car, and I get a text message from IRL because one of our listeners had just joined IRL. And I got a text alerting me to that, so I have to go back in and do what I can to dispose of IRL. I thought it was gone, but it's still there.
I don't believe you. I just don't believe you're keeping that app installed and you're still using it because you want to meet people IRL. Just admit it.
It's true. I'm going to Lollapalooza later on in August, so you know I gotta coordinate all my get-togethers for that.
Wait, you really are?
Yeah, I am actually.
Nice.
On Friday. So anyway, let's talk today about another app that's getting a major overhaul for iOS and macOS Catalina, and that's Photos, which I'm really excited about this because I think, you know, it feels like Photos is an app that Apple has tried over and over again to get right. I mean, it's been changed a lot. I mean, especially when you look at the Mac and you look back to the days of iPhoto and what it's become today. It's changed quite a bit. I know our friend Jason Snell has written a book about Photos, and he's had to update it quite a bit because the app keeps changing from underneath him. And I thought we would talk today about what's going to come with iOS 13 and Catalina. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good idea. And that's also a good point about Photos changing multiple times over the past few years. Because when you think about it, it's arguable that Photos are some of the most important things people buy an iPhone for,
right,
to take pictures and to take videos. And it only makes sense for Photos, for the app that you use to view those pictures and those videos, to evolve quickly. Maybe not as quickly as it should. I know that, for example, some of the Photos improvements that we have in iOS 13 this year were mentioned in a Mark Gurman report, maybe even a couple of years ago, but definitely more than a year ago. And they were, you know, the rumors are saying they were maybe postponed, you know, all of these machine learning infused enhancements to the main Photos view.
Right.
Those were rumored a while back. So you could argue that maybe Apple is not growing Photos quickly enough. But then again, last year, they focused a lot on performance and stability and getting rid of bugs. So I'm not complaining about that. But I think the improvements that we're going to discuss in iOS 13 and macOS Catalina, I think they sort of are a good representation of where Apple today is investing time and resources in, you know, advancing this machine learning technology that they have on iOS, all of these on-device processing capabilities. It's really quite the example of a bunch of strategies and a bunch of ideas that Apple keeps bringing up, but in Photos you can see them realized in practice. So from privacy to machine learning to on-device processing to iCloud integration, you know, integration between different frameworks like Contacts, which I'm going to discuss in a few minutes. I think it all comes together in the Photos app, which is a good example, possibly together with Messages, of all the major themes of the modern Apple, but in the form of a single app, which I think makes it a good topic because you can not only can you discuss the app itself and the features, but the technologies behind those features.
Yeah, it really does a nice job of bringing a lot of different things together. And, you know, it's something that's been evolving over time because as you can, was it last year when everybody was kind of joking about Photos being able to tell the difference between a mountain and a horse?
No, that was a few years ago.
Okay, time flies. But yes, we've gone from, you know, recognizing mountains and horses to something that's actually driving the design to some degree and making Photos look a lot nicer. And you're right. The camera is an awful big selling point of the iPhone, and Apple every single year is focusing on the hardware side and improving that and making the photos come out better. And their software obviously is a component of how the camera works and the camera app works, but the Photos app is just as important because that's how you browse and share and look at everything that you've taken. So it's worth going over that. Maybe we ought to mention just briefly some of the changes to the camera app though first, because there are a couple of small ones, right? There's a new portrait mode, which is this high key mono portrait effect.
Yeah.
Have you tried that yet? Because I guess it creates like a white background and a black and white portrait.
I did try it. Probably not in the best environment. I was at the beach with my girlfriend. Then I also tried it at home, but there was, not as much sunlight at home, unfortunately. It reminds me of when the first portrait effects first launched in beta. It looks super fake right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's the kind of feature that will be improved with the betas and possibly even with the point update to iOS. It just doesn't look good. Maybe I'm not skilled enough as a photographer to be able to take a high key mono photo that looks good, but the ones that I tested, they looked like a bad Photoshop job. Like cutting out the background, pasting a white layer, and then just making the subject black and white.
All right.
I'm sure that others will make it look good, but right now in beta, so we're recording now, beta 3 is the current beta. It's possible that when you're listening to this, beta 4 will be out or out soon. But right now, at least in my tests, it doesn't look very nice.
Yeah, and I actually haven't seen very many tests of it posted by anybody on Twitter or anywhere, which leads me to think that maybe they're not so great and people are just afraid to share them. Who knows? But I guess the other aspect of this is there's now a portrait mode intensity slider, so you can kind of back off the effect a little bit, which I think is a good idea because when the software picks the level of intensity of the portrait mode effect, it does look fake sometimes, like you were saying with the high key mono, and being able to back it off a little bit, I think makes a lot of sense to hopefully dial in something that's a little bit more realistic looking.
Yeah, I guess I very rarely find myself in the situation where I'm taking a picture with my iPhone and I need to carefully stage and plan the shot.
Mm-hmm.
Like most of the time, like most people, I would say, I just take a quick picture of something that is happening in front of me. And I usually do that from the lock screen or from Control Center. I can swipe down and tap the camera icon because I don't have the camera icon on my home screen. I just use Control Center. And usually I'm not like at staging a shot for a website or a magazine. I just need to take a picture of my friends doing something funny or my dogs playing around or sleeping, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I guess that if you are, and this doesn't mean that that people who actually use an iPhone for serious photography do not exist. It's just not my use case. Again, when I take portrait shots, it's usually because we're at the beach, or maybe my girlfriend and we went out for dinner and we dress nice, and so I want to take a picture, but I don't want to find myself spending like 2 minutes sliding things around and adjusting settings with my girlfriend, just waiting for me to take a photo. So
that makes a lot of sense. All right, so that's the camera. Is there anything else about the camera you want to mention, or should we just dive into photos?
I think the things that I wanted to see in the camera are still not there.
Right.
Primarily being able to change settings directly from the viewfinder. You still got to go to the settings app if you wanna change those.
Right.
At the very least, I think right now when you try and take a video, it actually doesn't tell you the format of the video. So I was hoping for a little more information on screen and to be able to change settings directly from the camera. That doesn't appear to be possible. So I really don't have anything else to add. And I think Apple focused on the Photos app right now. And also, I think improvements to the camera we're probably going to see in September with the new iPhones, because Apple usually likes to, with each new iPhone, there's usually a new camera feature. And so it is possible that there will be iOS 13 camera features that we're not seeing yet right now in the beta because we don't have the new iPhones. So we got to keep an eye out for that, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. I think a way to select the resolution of video on screen would be fantastic, because I don't take video as often as I take photos, and I forget what it's set at. And you don't necessarily want to take all your video at 4K 60 frames per second. That just takes up a lot of storage, and you don't necessarily need that. So a way to switch that quickly in the camera UI would be pretty nice. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Secure Shellfish, a fantastic way to access files on a server using SSH and SFTP from right inside Apple's Files app. That's right, it works from within the Files app. It works with most web servers, Linux servers, Macs, and even NAS solutions like Synology. On top of that, it's secure, putting you in charge of your own privacy. The app is free to try, and it's super easy to set up. You don't need to be an IT professional or a developer to benefit from this app. You just set up a connection in Secure Shellfish, and then it's available to you as a file provider in Apple's Files app, just like iCloud Drive or Dropbox. One thing I do a lot is use Secure Shellfish to access files on my Mac Mini from my iPad or iPhone locally on my home network, without having to go to sit at my Mac. But now that I've also added a dynamic DNS service, I can do the same thing remotely from any Wi-Fi network or mobile network. And if you buy Secure Shellfish's one-time in-app purchase, you can save files for offline access in Files too. One thing that's really cool, if you think about it, is that you can access files sitting on your Mac through a file provider and gain the benefit of backup on that Mac, something like Time Machine or another backup solution that you've got in place for your Mac. That works because modern iOS apps can open your files in place and edit them without exporting or copying them. That means you edit them, they're still sitting on the server, and that server is running and backing up with whatever you've got, Time Machine, whatever it happens to be. It's a great way to protect your data. Check out Secure Shellfish today to connect your servers and your apps. You can learn more about the app at secureshellfish.app/?app stories. Again, that's secureshellfish.app/?app stories. You can leave off the question mark and app stories, but please put them in there because that's how they know that you came from this show. I'll put a link in the show notes too. Thanks again to Secure Shellfish for supporting App Stories.
All right, let's talk about photos. So I guess the main change worth discussing is the new view in the Photos tab, which is the leftmost icon in the tab bar.
Right.
So Apple has gotten rid of moments and collections completely from this view. You now have a segmented control at the bottom that lets you switch between 4 types of views. The last one, which I think is also the default when you open Photos, is all photos. So the existing grid view that shows you thumbnails for all of your photos, including screenshots and videos and screen recordings. Everything's in there. You can see all of your photos. But what Apple is pushing heavily this time around is the separation between days, months, and years. This is a new intelligent view. Apple calls it, I think, a curated library, which is actually shown as a message at the bottom of the screen. And as you might imagine, the breakdown of photos is different depending on how you switch the view from. So you get a little more, you get a little more photos in the days view, and they are organized by days, and then months you get these collections of multiple weeks or locations, and then in years you get single sort of big thumbnails for individual years from your photos library. And it's sort of hard to describe. I think it makes a lot more sense once you see it and once you actually try it. I guess the days view of all of these is probably where people will spend the most time browsing their photos.
Yeah,
and I gotta
so.
say, it's very nice in that Apple is using machine learning to do a couple of things here. So they are removing, at least they are trying to remove screenshots or photos of receipts or screen recordings, things that are not photos, so that the days view can just highlight actual moments from your life. So selfies, videos, live photos, actual photography, not images.
I feel like they made this feature just for you and me and all of our screenshots, because my photo library is so polluted with screenshots that it's fantastic to try this and actually see my photos and not a bunch of screenshots.
Yeah, and it does a good job at that, I think.
It does.
it was worse in previous betas, but I think in beta 3 I am indeed seeing just photography, just photos and videos. And what is nice is that Apple is again using machine learning, and not just to remove screenshots and images, but also to remove duplicates. So they are running some basic deduplication of photos, so that you don't need to see, if you take a bunch of photos in succession within a few seconds of each other, you don't see them all, you just see maybe the key shot. Apple is also using machine learning to intelligently crop photos. So the previews that you see, the Photos app tries to center the shot so that it shows you faces, or that maybe in a collection of photos, it picks the one where somebody is smiling or looking directly at the camera, that kind of stuff. That was present in iOS before, but it all comes together more nicely, I think, in the new views, because you actually see this grid that uses different sizes. So for example, right now, I have photos from a birthday party that we had for my girlfriend last night. And in the days view, there's a shot where Silvia is looking directly at the camera and it's bigger. But others where are kind of blurry, but where other people are smiling, are smaller thumbnails.
Right.
And then there's a third size, which is sort of in the middle between those two, which is a medium thumbnail showing another person looking at the camera while I take the shot. So they are using machine learning in a few interesting ways. And also what is nice is that once you're browsing the view, live photos and videos, they autoplay in line within the grid with, of course, audio disabled. You can turn off autoplay in settings, but it makes the Photos app sort of come alive as you're scrolling through your photos. You see these animations happening, and you see, it makes it so much easier to browse and capture a moment again. I think it's a very nice visual effect, and it's not just nice, but it's also practical in that it gives you those extra seconds of context when looking at a photo that you would maybe otherwise not get in the all photos view, for example.
Yeah, I really like this. I think they've done a fantastic job with it so far, because as you said, I mean, it's not actually editing your photos, but because it's kind of got a predefined collage of photos in a grid. So you've got some that are kind of big squares and some that are smaller. What the machine learning does is it's centering the most important thing in the photo, the people or the object or whatever it is that is
pets.
Or pets,
works
right?
With animals too.
Exactly. Whatever the subject of the photo is, it does a very good job of centering that and making it look nice and kind of laying it out in a way that is great for browsing it. And then you can kind of dive in deeper from there if you want.
Yeah, and when you dive, so there's a few ways that you can dive deeper. Of course, you can tap on an individual photo and it'll open in full screen, but also some collections or some, I don't want to call them albums, or they used to be called moments. So for example, right now, July 1st is what used to be called a moment, but it's not called a moment anymore. But practically speaking, it's got a badge. This photo for July 1st, it's got a badge in the lower right corner that says +3. And it means that in that moment, I took 3 similar shots. And if I tap on that badge, the Photos app switches back to the All Photos view, but scrolls directly to that moment in time so that I can see all those shots together. And then I can, swipe back into the Days tab and it'll go back to my original location. And in fact, I want to mention now how it's from a design standpoint, it is really remarkable how, and I haven't seen a lot of people mention this, but if you start from the All Photos view and you start scrolling and you let go and the Photos app is still scrolling, you can actually tap on the tabs at the bottom as the content is scrolling, and it will reflow and adjusts from days to months to years, and you can just keep scrolling and throwing content on screen. And if you switch views, it'll keep scrolling, and it's super smooth, and it just expands and shrinks to show you moments or months or years, even while the content is still scrolling on screen. It's really impressive how you can scroll, change views, and the collage changes format and size as it goes. It's really, really well done.
That's really interesting because I think it's both a design and a technical achievement, right? Because it's both being able to have the kind of animation and design to make that look good, but also to be able to switch while it's moving, switch the data source and bring in those new photos is not an insignificant thing when you're talking about large photos that are being loaded kind of real time.
Yeah. Months is interesting in that it doesn't show you a single card for each month, but it can show you, and they're usually organized by location, multiple cards for the same month. So, for example, in June, I have a card for London. I have another for San Jose. It says June 1 to June 8, which makes sense because I was at WWDC. And then I have different cards for Rome or for the beach where we go to with my girlfriend and the dogs. And it pulls a cover photo for each moment, for the lack of a better term, and it also autoplays live photos and autoplays videos. I think it's a really nice view, the months one, to get a sense of what you did in a particular month, thanks to the usage of multiple cards and multiple moments.
Right. It's kind of combining, it's a combination of time-based events as well as location, and then also things like birthdays and anniversaries are also kind of called out as well, right? I mean, we should talk about that.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned that because today, as we're recording this, it's Sylvia's birthday. And so automatically, what Photos has done, so Sylvia is a known person in the People album of Photos.
Right.
And it's tied, that means that the Sylvia face is tied directly to the Sylvia contact card in the Contacts app.
Right.
And of course, I have a birthday set for Sylvia in Contacts. So Photos, by virtue of integrating with Contacts, knows that today it's Sylvia's birthday. And so in the Years tab, all of the thumbnails, all of them, literally going back to 2010, they have a photo of Sylvia.
Oh, okay.
Because it's her birthday. And so all of them, they have Sylvia on the cover photo. This is a feature that Apple mentioned at WWDC, that for birthdays and anniversaries, you will get this sort of a thematic integration with Photos, but actually seeing it done in practice, it's really something, especially on iPad, where there's a full grid of all the years that I have in my photo library, and all of those items in the grid, they have a pretty picture of Sylvia. Which is very nice.
Yeah, that is nice. I haven't had like a birthday come up since WWC in our family, so I haven't seen that yet. Do you know if it works with things like holidays, like, I don't know, New Year's Eve or Christmas or whatever?
I'm not sure yet. What I do know is that I think this will be just for birthdays. So this is totally my speculation. I think it'll be just for birthdays. But holidays and events such as concerts or other types of like live performances that iOS can understand, those will be in the months view. And I know that iOS was already capable, I think since iOS 11 or 12, of understanding at least concerts and other types of live performances. Apple is using a database. I don't know where it's coming from, but they know, for example, that in July 10 last year, I was in London to see Justin Timberlake live, and so I have a Justin Timberlake moment in the Photos app. I didn't need to manually input, Justin Timberlake concert. iOS just figured it out. And I talked about this in one of my old iOS reviews. So I think, and for holidays, I should also add that it's possible. Again, this was an existing feature that is still in iOS 13. You can actually disable showing holiday events in your memories for your home country. So if you live in Italy and iOS assumes that Italians celebrate Christmas, but you don't actually, maybe you're not Catholic and you don't celebrate Christmas, you can actually disable that as an option in settings, which is that's a really thoughtful option for people who don't celebrate certain local holidays. So I think events, holidays, and performances and concerts will be in the months view, but I may be wrong.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm very happy with this so far. I've found it's a lot more. What it does is it draws you in a way that Photos didn't used to. In that you really start browsing your photos a lot more and moving through because you can kind of easily move through months, years, and days. And, you could do that before, but the presentation just wasn't as compelling as it is now. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Remote for Mac. Remote for Mac is an easy-to-set-up iOS app that lets you use your Mac from anywhere on your home network. That's right, you're using your iOS devices to control your Mac, and it's super cool. Using just your iPhone or your iPad as a trackpad and mouse, you can launch apps and control system settings on your Mac, but you're using an iPhone or an iPad. The app is perfect for controlling popular media apps and streaming websites like VLC, Netflix, YouTube, and Amazon Prime. And there's even a Today widget for controlling media. But the app can do so much more. You can create control pads for Mac apps and websites. It's got convenient mouse and keyboard control built right into the app, so you can do things like browse the web or read your email on a Mac that's connected to a television without having to do things like try to juggle a mouse or keyboard in your lap if you're sitting on the couch, for instance. Remote for Mac supports full control of any app installed on your Mac, too, using menu bar commands and app actions. And, as I said, it has system actions, too, so you can do things like put your Mac to sleep, turn off the display, and a whole lot more. I use this coupled with the app's support for Siri shortcuts to make it super easy to put my Mac's display to sleep at the end of the day when I'm finished working. All right, there's a lot that this app can do, and so you should really go check it out and learn more. You can do that by going to remoteformac.app. That's remoteformac.app to learn more about remote control for Mac and how you can use your iOS devices to take control of your Mac. Our thanks to Remote for Mac for their support of App Stories.
A few other things worth mentioning in the Months view. There's an ellipsis button that you can tap on a moment, and that allows you to see all those photos on a map or to play a movie for all the photos, so live photos and videos from that memory, that moment. And you can also share. And that gets you all of the share sheet for multiple photos, essentially. In addition, a new feature in iOS 13, when you are viewing a live photo, and so you press the screen to see the animation. So the live photo animation is longer than in iOS 12. In addition, if you have live photos taken within a few seconds of each other, when you start playing the first one, it'll automatically jump to the next one as well.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah, so if you start previewing the first live photo of a set of live photos, the Photos app will keep previewing them and actually jump to the next item. But they need to be taken, a few seconds within each other for this feature to work. You can export multiple live photos to video. So you can select them and save the video contained inside of a live photo or multiple ones as a file, as a video file on your device. Is there anything else that I'm forgetting at this point? There's a few other.
Yeah, I don't think so. Although that's a point worth pausing on. I think that live photos are great, but sharing them has always been difficult, especially if you're sharing them on social media or with somebody who doesn't have an iOS device. The fact that you can now turn them into video clips and share them that way is a big advantage, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And especially when it comes to, going beyond social media, but even if you just want to share pictures with somebody else on AirDrop or messages, for example, that's where the new share sheet comes in. And there's a lot of things that I don't like about the share sheet. I tweeted about this a few days ago. Maybe we should talk about it on App Stories unless Apple changes some of the things that I don't like. But in any case, as far as photos goes, you will see when you share and you hit the share button on a photo, the new share sheet design, besides the easier AirDrop activation and the messages shortcuts at the top, at the very top of the share sheet, there's a new header. And that shows you a small preview of the photo you're sharing, tells you how many photos you're sharing at once, but there's also a new options button. This is a new feature in iOS 13. If you tap options, you will see that you can choose from a few settings. So you can choose to send a photo as an individual photo or as an iCloud link.
Right.
So the first choice is, do you want to send an image file or do you want to share a link with somebody else? Also, at the bottom, there's a new include section, which is very nice because this one, it lets you easily remove any location data from your photos. So you can share a photo, but remove the location metadata so that the other people cannot inspect the photo and see where it was taken. And also you can enable all photos data, which includes location, but in addition to that, also includes things like, original quality. So you don't get any compression if you choose all photos data. You also get the full edit history and metadata, like things like keywords and descriptions, which means that the recipient of the photo, if you enable sharing all photos data, that person will be able to see and modify all of your edits, your filters, your live photo effects, all of those things. It's the full data contained inside a photo.
Right, which means that person can also revert to the original, right, and do their own edit of it. Yeah, which is nice for, maybe somebody shares their photo with you and they've gotten a little too punchy with the color or something and you don't like it. I mean, you can apply your own effect at that point. I think that is like one of those sleeper features that I think will make a big difference in sharing, because AirDrop was problematic to the extent that it didn't share all the metadata as well. And now you're getting the full fidelity of the images that you're sharing with somebody through AirDrop. So it's now, to me, that's the best way to share these types of things.
Yeah. Not a lot of changes in the For You tab. I think actually no changes at all. It's still the same as last year. So you have your sharing suggestions, which I criticized a bit in my iOS 12 review. I don't think they've gotten any better. In fact, and maybe it's just a beta thing, but I think it's gotten worse. Like right now,
how so?
At least before in iOS 12, the Photos app tried to understand the faces of my friends in photos.
Right.
Right now, it only recognizes me and Silvia. Otherwise, it just says share with friends. But when I tap next, it doesn't, it used to spin and try to analyze, which people were in the photo. Doesn't do that anymore. So I don't know if it's a beta limitation or an actual, Apple realized it's not good enough. Let's just remove, let's just use it for your absolutely maybe just favorite people. You can actually mark certain people as favorites. Sylvia is one of my favorites. Maybe it's just for them. I don't know. You get your memories, again, same as last year, your featured photos, your effect suggestions, and your activity. So basically, I think the entire For You section is the same as iOS 12.
Well, there's a little bit of a difference. When I'm looking at mine right now side by side. And when I get to the memories section, the typography is different. All right, I'm just telling you, the typography is different, but the photo collections are the same. And one thing that is different, though, is that I have a section on iOS 12 called effect suggestions. So, like long exposure. I'm not seeing that on iOS 13.
Oh, I see it.
Oh, really?
Maybe just it's here. It's still here.
I don't have it, unfortunately. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think the For You tab, besides the very important typographic changes, John, is still the same.
All right. I was, a hidden feature. I was gonna try to like blow this thing wide open. All right.
No. We should talk about, I guess, so we talked about. I'm forgetting about search. Search does have some improvements in iOS 13, in that the content that you see in the search tab still the same as before. You have your groups, your categories of subjects recognized in photos. So things like cats or animals, or I have one for sunbathing, which is interesting. You got your places, you got your people, so all the same. But when you actually search, you can now more easily combine multiple search criteria.
Right.
So the way that this works is you can just type, for example, dog. I'm doing this now. You can type dog, then you can type beach, then you can type 2017, and you don't need to accept each individual suggestion. Used to be in iOS 12 that search parameters were tokenized. And this is actually also a feature in iOS 13, but Apple is not using it anymore in Photos, which is a good decision because it makes it more streamlined, because more people use search in Photos than, say, in Notes or in Files. It used to be that you typed dog and you needed to tap on the suggestion for dog.
Right.
Then you needed to type 2017 and accept the suggestion for 2017. Now you can just type. No need to accept any suggestions. And again, I just typed dog beach 2017 and it found 53 results for photos of dogs taken at the beach 2 years ago. It works.
Doesn't work for me. I don't have any dog beach photos from 2017. I'm doing it right now.
Well, maybe you should try something. Maybe you should try Coffee Chicago 2017.
Maybe I have. If I just type dog, I have 34 photos, and none of them are your dogs. I don't know why that is.
Interesting. So you just take pictures of other people's dogs?
I guess. I haven't ever met your dogs, Federico, so there's that.
Well, that is true. But still, why would you take pictures? Oh, I don't want to know.
All right. This obviously a sore subject. We'll have to revisit that at a later date. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Linode. With Linode, you can instantly deploy and manage an SSD server in the Linode cloud. And you can get a server up and running in just seconds with your choice of Linux distro, resources, and node location. Linode serves their customers with the help of 10 data centers across the globe, and they're about to add more. Mumbai, India, and Toronto, Canada will both have data centers before 2020. Linode features native SSD storage, a 40 gigabit network, and Intel E5 processors, meaning you're able to serve your customers even faster than before. And so you don't have to stress about overspending, Linode have designed their pricing tiers to feature hourly billing with the added bonus of a monthly cap on all plans and add-on services, such as backups and node balancers. We use Linode for our Slack bots at Mac Stories, and you know what? We love it because it's reliable and the price is super competitive. Linode has pricing options to suit everyone's needs. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for just $5 a month, and they offer high memory plans starting with 16 gigabytes of RAM. And Linode has a special offer just for you. As a listener of this show, you can go to linode.com/appstories and use promo code appstories2019 to get $20 towards any Linode plan. Again, that promo code is appstories2019. On the 1 gigabyte of RAM plan, that's like 3 months. And with a 7-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Give Linode a try today. That's linode.com/appstories and the promo code appstories2019 to learn more, sign up, and make the most of that $20 credit. Our thanks to Linode for their support of the show.
The other major functionality that we should talk about that I would like you to go over, John, is editing.
So there's a lot of new editing options in Photos now, which I really like because I've always used, when I've wanted to make more refined selections and edits to a particular photo, I've always ended up going to another app. But now we've got things right in the Photos app like vibrancy and white balance and sharpening and noise reduction, and it's all right there when you tap that edit button. And it's been rearranged and designed a little differently. If you remember in iOS 12, the auto correction button, whatever is the magic wand, was up in the upper right-hand corner. That's been dropped down to where it's a lot more reachable, which that's literally one of those little annoyances that when I'm out walking around, I take photos and maybe I want to edit it right away and share it. It was always hard to get to that button, but now it's a lot more reachable near the bottom of the screen. And instead, up in that corner is the 3-dot button, which is used for photo extensions. So, a lot of photo apps have extensions that allow you to edit in place in the Photos app using their tools. Things like Pixelmator has had that, and a bunch of other apps have had that. So that's up in the corner now because I don't think as much as I think Apple may have hoped that would take off, I don't think that photo extensions has really taken off all that much. So you can edit all those things, as well as you can do things like also edit video, which is new. Video was not something you could do before. And this is really nice if you're doing Instagram stories or whatever it happens to be. You can do things like crop and rotate, as well as all the other kind of photo editing options that are available, like I just mentioned, like white balance and sharpening and all that kind of stuff. It's all available for photos now too, and you can do things like the rotate is kind of a good one too, because every now and then you end up with a photo where the your iPhone just doesn't recognize which way it's pointing, and it's really nice to be able to quickly rotate that and get it where it has to be without having to have another app on your phone to do that. So it's a nice little utility. I mean, are there any other things going on with editing that you've seen? I think that's most of it.
I think it's very impressive that Apple has built essentially a lightweight version of iMovie right into Photos.
Sure.
When you think about it. I mean, sure, you cannot do fancy transitions or have text overlays and other type of graphical elements, but there's a lot that you can do, and there's a lot that you can preview in real time, and you can zoom in on a video as you're applying an effect. And we're now talking about doing things like applying real-time effects to 4K video on a phone.
Yeah.
You can zoom in and see on a 4K video, you can pinch to zoom and see how an effect changes a particular frame in a video, which I think is really impressive. And of course, as you mentioned, being able to rotate video, people used to rely on iMovie or third-party apps for that, but it's no longer required. And actually, this is not about photos, but in files. If you have a video in the Files app, you can now also rotate a video within Files using the new quick actions in the inspector, which is very nice. So Apple must have heard all the complaints about being unable to rotate video in iOS. Now you can do that in Photos and in Files. But I think it's very impressive how all of the filters and effects can be adjusted in intensity, including auto. I think I was not expecting to have basically a real and kind of full-featured photo and video editing tool built right into Photos. Now, how many people will take advantage of this? I don't know, but I have a feeling that more people edit photos and videos than, for example, use shortcuts. So I think it'll be quite a popular addition to the Photos app. And anything that Apple can do to remove the need to go find a third-party app for a basic feature like rotating a video, I always welcome those types of changes. And I think I'm very impressed by the performance and the controls that Apple put into Photos. Like, I was not expecting to have all of these options in the Photos app.
No, I really wasn't either. And I'm also glad that they've extended to the Files app, as you mentioned, because Quick Actions is something we got last year with Mojave on the Mac. And I find myself using Quick Actions all the time because they're just the kind of little things that you need to do to an image or some other file very quickly, that it's so much nicer if you're already in the Finder looking for what you need to deal with, to do it right there in place instead of having to go to an app and do it. And I use that all the time now, and I'm glad to see that more of that is coming to iOS as well. All right, Federico, why don't we call it quits for today? I think Photos is one of those things that once people have this on their phones in the fall, that they're going to really appreciate, because I know I'm guilty, as a lot of people are, I think, of taking lots and lots of pictures and then they just kind of sit there. They're just on my phone. They get uploaded to the cloud and they're there. And I don't always go back and look at them. And one of the ways that I think Photos now is doing a better job of making me want to review my photos is that it's like, as we talked about at the very outset of the episode, it's getting rid of all the screenshots and the pictures of receipts and all that kind of stuff that gets in the way of enjoying the moments that you're capturing with the camera on your phone. So I do expect that I will spend more time kind of browsing through my photos now that there's not a lot of noise in the process and it's showing me the very best things I have. I want to thank our sponsors again for this episode. That's Secure Shellfish, Remote for Mac, and Linode. Of course, you can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico is working really hard on an iOS review, and I think if you listen carefully to this episode, you can probably tell some of the sections that he worked on this week. And you can find the two of us over on Twitter and on Instagram as well. Federico is at Viticci. That's Viticci on both. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.